the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
Our final stop on our 2023 Team Spotlight Series, it brings us back to Ohio, and this time we're talking about the Cleveland Browns, who finished last season at 7-10, scoring 361 points, giving up 381 with a negative 20 differential. Their passing offense, it ranked 22nd in the league with 202.7 yards per game, while their passing defense was the fifth best, allowing just 196.2. Now, on the run side of things, they could run the ball with Nick Chubb. They're averaging 146.5 yards per contest, which was the fifth best in the league. Meanwhile, their run defense, they were allowing about 135 yards per game, which was 25th. DeShaun Watson looked like a quarterback last season who hadn't played in over 2 seasons. In fact, I'm not even sure he was an improvement over Jacoby Brissett, who did an adequate job under center. Cleveland is going to run the ball, and they're going to stop the run. That's what they basically were able to do. They just couldn't find a way to throw the ball or defend the pass. Nick Chubb turned in another stellar season there, finishing third in rushing with 1,525 yards, 12 touchdowns on just 302 attempts. Cleveland must get off to a much better start than they did last season. They started 3-7 and had themselves on the outside looking in before November even concluded. They will also need to take care of business inside the AFC, where they won just 4 of 12 contests. And it all starts at the draft and what the Cleveland Browns were able to do. Now, they didn't have a first or a second round selection, so it kind of limited what they were able to do. But when you look at the selections that they made, especially in the first 2, it addresses some needs. In the third round, they went out there and got wide receiver Cedric Tillman, big type X-alpha type receiver there on the outside. In the third round, they're able to get defensive tackle Siaka Aka out of Baylor. In the fourth round, big DeShaun Jones out of Ohio State there with the 111th pick. And in the fourth round, they were able to go out and get edge defender Isaiah McGuire. And in the fifth round, they got themselves a quarterback very similar to DeShaun as far as that Konami code ability, and that's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Now, their biggest additions in free agency include Dalvin Tomlinson, edge Ogabanya Okoronkwo, safety is Juan Thornhill, wide receiver Elijah Moore, which they made a trade for with the Jets, defensive tackle Treston Hill, edge defender Zadarius Smith, and wide receiver Marquez Callaway. I mean, if you're wondering where Callaway actually ended up. Now, their losses, there is some significant losses, but nothing too major here. Edge defender Jadeveon Clowney there, probably better stopping the run last season than he was at getting after the quarterback. Speaking of quarterbacks, they lost Jacoby Brissett. They lost cornerback Greedy Williams, defensive tackle Taven Bryan, linebacker Tay Davis, and another edge defender in Chase Winovich. The best move, hey, I'm not sure if the best move has happened yet. Perhaps a DeShaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins reunion is in the works. Now, I don't want to quite go that far because we know Hopkins, as of this recording, is still a free agent, weighing his options, and he's probably got no shortage of people courting him at this time. But until it happens, I'm going to go with Zadarius Smith to play alongside Myles Garrett, giving the Browns arguably the best pass rushing duo in the National Football League. One way to improve a pass defense is make sure the other team can't pass the ball, something which the Browns will be able to do on either side. The worst move for the Browns, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't, but the decision not to re-sign either D'Ernest Johnson or Kareem Hunt could come back to bite the Browns. Now, the key word here is could, because we know that the Browns have an admiration for former Cincinnati Bearcat Jerome Ford, who was quite productive in college. After Ford, though, it's Demetric Felton, who's more of a receiving back. I'm not even sure he's a back. He's more like a slot back, maybe. I don't even know what Demetric Felton is nowadays. And John Kelly. Now, when we look at the Browns depth chart, and we have to take a really close eye on it because I'm looking at this team and I'm like, okay, where are they going to go? Joshua Dobbs, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they're backing up DeShaun Watson. If Watson was to go down, I'm not going to lie, the Browns season could go down pretty quickly. Running back, we know Nick Chubb is going to see him lines share of the carries there. Jerome Ford is the next man up. And then wide receiver, I actually don't hate this wide receiver room. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cedric Tillman, Marcus Goodwin there, and David Bell. Tight end, David Njoku, Jordan Atkins, Harrison Bryant. They got plenty of tight ends to go around. Of course, this defense, much improved. Myles Garrett, he's joined by Zadarius Smith. Jordan Elliott is joined by Dalvin Tomlinson. Linebackers, Sion Takataki, Anthony Walker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And the secondary is improved as well. Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, Greg Newsome, and Juan Thornhill. So looking at the camp battles currently going on in Cleveland, the first one that catches my attention is Donovan Peoples-Jones versus Cedric Tillman. Why are we so quick to forget what DPS did last season? I know that as fantasy managers, we love shiny new things. We love all the new toys that fantasy brings us. But let's not pretend that Donovan Peoples-Jones didn't just catch 61 passes for 839 yards just a season ago. Sure, there's going to be competition out there. We're not just talking about Peoples-Jones and Cedric Tillman. We also have to add in the fact that Elijah Moore is going to come in there and be part of this passing game as well. Tillman is your prototypical ex-wide receiver, and he's coming out in Tennessee there as a 21-year-old who had a college dominator of 32%, and Hendon Hooker, when targeting Tillman, had a 155.8 passer rating. So, Cedric Tillman, he's pretty quarterback friendly, but Donovan Peoples-Jones was pretty good too. I just don't want people to forget that DPS can get the job done. What needs to happen for this Cleveland Browns team in 2023? Someone needs to knock off the rust on DeShaun Watson. I don't care how you do it or how it gets done, but the rust needs to come off. Not just with a fancy new coat of paint, with all these shiny new toys. The rust has to come off. There's options in this passing game. Cooper, Moore, DPJ, Tillman, David Njoku, one of the best backs in the league running behind one of the best offensive lines in the league. Heck, there's no excuses anymore in Cleveland. There's no excuses for DeShaun Watson. He's got all this guaranteed money, but we've got no guarantee of success right now. And DeShaun Watson needs to start pulling his weight, to be honest with you. Cleveland will also feature an improved defense. Better defense means your offense is going to get the ball more and more, especially when you've got Zadarius Smith and Juan Thornhill out of the equation. And I do see that the Cleveland Browns are going to improve this season, because when I look at their 7-10 record last year, I don't see them duplicating that. I think DeShaun Watson is going to be better. He's not going to be the DeShaun Watson that we all know from 2019, but he's going to be improved on that 2022 version of him. So I see the Cleveland Browns finishing as 11-6 and possibly squeezing into that wild card round of the AFC playoffs. Now, when we look at fantasy, we got to talk about the top 5 fantasy options here for the Cleveland Browns, and it starts at the running back position, and it starts with Nick Chubb. Chubb's injury history and heavy usage is a red flag in Dynasty, but in 2023, green means go. Stack the box all you want. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it when you've got these pass catchers here in Cooper and Moore and DPS and Cedric Tillman. But Chubb had the 3rd most yards versus stacked boxes last season. He also led the league in explosive plays with 23 runs of greater than 15 yards. Amari Cooper, he comes in at number 2. Year 2 with DeShaun Watson should prove to be more fruitful than year 1. And in year 1, Amari Cooper finished with 1,100 yards catching passes from Watson and Jacoby Brissett. Defenses have to respect these other options. We talk about there's options on this team. There has to be respect for this Cleveland Browns offense, which should allow for more opportunities for Cooper. Number 3, DeShaun Watson. Believe it or not, even after that dreadful 2022 season, all time, on a points per game basis, Watson still ranks 3rd. He still ranks 3rd, and they've added weapons in this passing game. They have that solid run game, and whenever you have that Konami code ability like Watson has, you're going to have an opportunity to return to form, and that return to form should happen sooner rather than later. And number 4, David Njoku. Watson really hurt Njoku last season as far as fantasy is concerned. From weeks 1 through 12, Njoku was a tight end 8 in fantasy despite missing 2 contests. He averaged 10.8 fantasy points per game, and yet he still finished as a tight end 15, failing to score more than 6 fantasy points in each of the final 3 contests. At number 5, how about Elijah Moore? I remember a time when Elijah Moore was one of the most dominant wide receivers in fantasy. I believe it was 2021, weeks 7 through 13, where Moore averaged 17.7 fantasy points per game. He racked up 123.6 fantasy points over that time. And only Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson produced more in that time period. So who's the player from the Browns that you need to add? Hey, look, maybe I'm a fantasy fossil, but I still believe in getting those running backs on your roster. And Nick Chubb, he's coming in at the mid to late 2nd round, and that is something I can live with, especially if I grab a top-end wide receiver in the 1st round. Chubb loses some value here when we talk about PPR scoring, as he saw only 37 targets a season ago, but his heavy usage in the run game, and we talk about Jerome Ford being that 2nd option, I don't see that usage dropping a whole heck of a lot here. He still finished as the RB6 in PPR scoring. Even if the Browns do decide to pass more, Chubb is still going to remain a top 5 fantasy running back here, even in redraft. Now, the biggest bust, it's going to be DeShaun Watson, because we still don't know what we're going to get. I need to see him do something before I can trust him. I saw nothing last year, not even a glimpse. Sometimes we get a glimpse of something that, you know what? There's something there that I can work with. I didn't even see that. We know what DeShaun Watson is capable. He's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks fantasy football has ever seen. He has produced with very little help in the past, but that was just it. That was the past. Let's hope that the reports from OTAs, they continue to remain positive and translate into the regular season. I don't know if biggest bust is the word to describe Watson, but biggest risk certainly fits the bill. Now, the best fantasy value from the Browns team, for whatever reason, Amari Cooper remains a value. You cannot convince me that there are 18 other wide receivers that you would prefer in fantasy football in 2023. Right now, he sits as my wide receiver 13, and I feel that I'm still disrespecting him. Now, I'm hoping I'm wrong about Watson here being a high risk or a bust potential, because if I am, that means that I'm going to be right when it comes to Amari Cooper. Heck, Calvin Ridley hasn't even played in over a year, and he's already being drafted ahead of the 28-year-old Amari Cooper. How about a sleeper pick for the Browns? I'm going to go with Elijah Moore because I love everything that I'm hearing right now coming out of OTAs. Now, I know you shouldn't believe everything you're hearing, but the noise, it's getting too loud for me to simply ignore. Usually I can block it out, but I cannot block this out anymore. And I love myself a good redemption story. Moore was basically buried by the New York Jets organization, and he was outspoken and frustrated, and rightfully so. I mean, he was catching passes from Zach Wilson there, if you really want to call that passes in which he was seeing. Now, I can't believe that Aaron Rodgers was okay with the Jets trading Elijah Moore. Maybe he prefers Randall Cobb. I don't know, but that doesn't seem to be a very good move. But Moore's ADP right now is about 102 or wide receiver 49. Now, I'm looking for the Browns to create plays for him, manufacture touches. I'm looking for more to motion out of the backfield to create these opportunities. And I'm looking for opportunities for this Browns team to be more productive in fantasy. I really believe that Watson could rebound. I believe Nick Chubb is going to continue doing what Nick Chubb does. I think Amari Cooper has wide receiver 1 type potential. And I also believe that Elijah Moore has the opportunity to be more than he's ever been. With that all being said, this has been your Cleveland Browns Team Spotlight, and we'll see you next week.